Hey guys, I'm sorry that I'm so late. If you don't like it, maybe stan a YouTuber who's less of a diva. I've had a hard day, a busy day. Um, I got my eyelashes permed, so you can see they're very upright. So my life's hard. My eyelashes are snatched off of my lids. It's time to answer some difficult questions about philosophy. Reed Carter. Let's get us started. What do we have today? Heidegger, Hegel. Favorite Blink 182 song that isn't all the small things? Reed, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think I can name a Blink 182 song. Uh, Maybe the one, whatever one Neil Cicerega uses in a thing. Probably that one. Alejandro Herrera says, "Hey, Natalie, now that Euro-American culture is entirely based on nostalgia and remaking old archetypes and narratives without making any new ones, such as late capitalism, I'm wondering, what do you think our media landscape is going to look like when it starts feeling nostalgic for the 2000s? I'm not sure how media is going to make us feel nostalgic for intense paranoia, xenophobia, and financial catastrophe, especially since we still live in the shadow of the Bush years. But I've learned never to underestimate capitalism. Also, it's been about 2 years since I subscribed and you had around 10,000 subs, and I'm really proud over how much you've changed and grown for the better. While some of the humor in vids like Pickup Artists and Alpha Males are a bit cringe, they still help me come to terms with my low-key misogynistic past and continuing the process of unlearning, and I don't think I would be the same person I am now without seeing those vids at an important time in my emotional development. So thank you, and I'm really proud of you." Well, you're welcome, Alejandro. I would say that if I were to predict nostalgia for the 2000s, imagine like Vaporwave, but with MySpace. So let's bring this down a little bit. Yeah. That's my guess, is that it's going to be a kind of based, maybe like emo scene chic will return. I don't know. That would be weird, wouldn't it? Like if that shit was popular again. That stuff that was like basically like loathed at the time that it was a thing, but which could, what if on like high fashion runways used to have like scene looks by 2029? Oh god, that's where we're headed, isn't it? Well, if the world doesn't end by then, we'll see. Maggie's, it's like very optimistic of you, Alejandro, imagining that there's going to be nostalgia. Maggie's daddy: "When high school boys are researching any topic, I hope they land on ContraPoints. Your work has no parallel, Natalie. Cheers." Cheers to you, Maggie's daddy. Bibis Babis says, "When I read Carl Sagan or Isaac Asimov, I'm filled with hope and desire for a future of a human race united with a common urgency to preserve our little blue marble. Do you know of any writers today that inspire the same sense? That we can come together as a species to fix our worst problems: climate change, war, violence?" You know, Babis, I actually don't. Like, I think an interesting thing that's kind of happened to our kind of pop culture intellectual consciousness is we've kind of lost the like astronomical or cosmological perspective. Like, I feel like that's something that was like really animated, like, you know, science fiction really animated like popular imagination from like the 60s to, you know, I guess to like new atheism. But I think that with like space exploration basically like indefinitely on hold, and like a lot of problems on Earth that were supposed to be solved by now just getting worse, I think a lot of people aren't thinking about the little blue marble. And so I think that envisioning like the species coming together seems, in some ways, maybe it seems further away than it seemed in, to Gene Roddenberry or Isaac Asimov, like you say, like, because I think that like the way things are now, it seems like there's just no sign of an end to these conflicts, right? Like, now that we know that like the end of history is a sham, like, it just, what seemed like it was maybe around the corner, this kind of like global unity, that now seems like a kind of a delusion. So that's a depressing answer. I'm sorry, but those are my thoughts. Aiden Sargent says, "Hi Natalie, I'm here with 2 quick questions because I got skipped last month." Ah, yes, I remember you. Yes, we'll give you both questions here. On the last stream, you spoke about retiring the Tabby character, citing a dissonance between your intentions for the character and how viewers have grown to view her. Can you expand on this? I've always seen viewer engaged endearment toward Tabby as on the left, empathizing with her, recognizing our own internal flaws through her exaggerated portrayal. Yeah, maybe that's so. Like, I think that the character was sort of introduced as like a parody, but I think people identify with the parody so much, like, not just like, oh, we see our own flaws reflected in this character and there's something endearing about that, but I think a lot of people just like unironically like, yes, Tabby, like, like, Tabby's not anything, there's nothing wrong with, like, Tabby did nothing wrong. I think it's the slogan that I think doesn't exist, but like, I feel like that a lot of people have the Tabby did nothing wrong attitude, and that's not like how I write for the character, as if the character's like, oh, this is someone to aspire to, you know what I mean? Like, because to me, she's kind of flawed, like maybe tragically flawed. So I feel like maybe I'm just like making fun of my audience. That's not, and that's, that's obviously a venerable tradition itself. But I don't know if that's the healthiest way to deal with this issue. I don't think it's the healthiest way to deal with these disagreements. Aiden's second question. Second, how did you find the general reaction to R Trap's Gay? I found it very positive. It's actually, at the moment, for how many days it's been since the video was released, on track to be my most successful video ever. So it's been 1 week and we just hit 700,000 views. So that's actually faster growth in the first week than the Incels video had. And the reception, I would say, is overwhelmingly positive. So I feel good about it. Obviously, like, there's, some people on Twitter are not super happy about it. But interestingly, for like, we might get, maybe other people ask questions related to this that we'll get to later in the stream. But interestingly to me is that what people seem to be objecting to is not what I thought people would object to. Like, what I was expecting is people to be really mad that I said traps in the title. But instead what people are mad about is basically like the aesthetic all over again. Like, they basically read me as like a kind of like true scum, like setting up a new bioessentialism and like gatekeeping with the definition of transness. Now, I don't think that's what I'm doing, but I do sort of see what they're talking about with that, and I think there's a version of that criticism that I actually do think is valid, and that I'm willing to take to heart. I'll say more. I have a strong suspicion someone else is going to ask a question about that, so I'll get more specific about that later in the stream. Otherwise, I'll say something about it at the end. Okay, Dr. Jordan Peterson, very funny, says, "Hey Natalie, I've recently become somewhat interested in philosophy, and a while ago I read A History of Western Philosophy. Are there any other casual books you'd recommend? If that question is too boring or reminds you too much of a dark time, do you have any opinions on people who use the label egalitarian versus feminist? Thanks, love your videos." People ask me all the time for like an introductory philosophy book, and I feel like I never really have a good response. But just the other day I was thinking, History of Western Philosophy is Bertrand Russell, right? Well, you could try Bertrand Russell's other book called Problems of Philosophy. That's just like introduces some basic philosophical problems from the like Bertrand Russell perspective. So that's like a little subset of philosophy, but you could try that. That's what's coming to mind anyway. What I think of egalitarian versus feminist, I think egalitarian versus feminist is just, that's just the all lives matter of gender, you know? like I think that's just like, yes, like there's, you know, only like a very fringe of rad femmes is not striving basically for justice and equality of the sexes. It's really so the notion that egalitarianism is the opposition to feminism is basically just a way of straw manning the feminist claims as some kind of, as if it was some kind of female supremacist movement, which is nonsense. Okay. Kaylee Keller says, I very much dislike the feeling of being a pawn in a political debate right now. Whenever the right wants a distraction, insert removal of trans liberty here, then the left responds vociferously in support. The liberty is or isn't taken away, and neither side has lost anything except the trans community. I'm a federal employee, not furloughed, so I feel very under the gun, but also that my right to discrimination protections shouldn't be a national issue in the first place. Is there a way to not play the game and also not lose it? Sorry for being overly verbose. I don't think that was overly verbose. I think that I know exactly what you're talking about when you say I don't like feeling like being a pawn, because it's really, I've been thinking about this lately. It takes a psychological toll to be constantly the subject of a debate, you know? And even if like you're surrounded by people who like support you and support your side of the debate, the fact that there is even a debate is degrading, and it has an effect over time. But I think, you know, trans people are far, far from the only people who are in this position. Like think about like American politics for the last, you know, 150 years could be like summarized as like white people arguing amongst ourselves how racist to be, and everyone else just having to kind of cope with that situation. And I think like the big like debate of the American consciousness right now is, do we build the wall? Where build the wall is not really a question of border security, but like a symbolic gesture that includes, you know, shutting out Native Americans for even, you know, as we saw in this stupid story about these awful private school boys. Like the wall is just a symbol for racism. So do we build the wall or not? I'm sure it's intensely, to be a, you know, immigrant in this country must be exhausting right now and fucking demoralizing and terrifying. So a lot of us are in this country are in this situation. Trans people are the like of the LGBT. Trans people have been picked out this decade as like, oh, everyone's gonna gang up on us since the conservatives kind of ran out of speed on the gay marriage issue. So is there a way to escape this? I don't know that there is a way to escape it, except by, you know, repeatedly making the case that we should not be the subject of this debate, and getting as many people to see that as possible. And hopefully eventually, you know, this terrible debate will stop and we don't have to constantly renegotiate the basic terms of our existence. But it's a ways away. Okay. Thea Smuckler says, I'm a pansexual cis woman, but I'm large-framed and tall. I've been really tempted while at the bar to say, just wanted to let you know I'm a trans woman, to kind of filter out assholes when men approach me. If talking to a trans person is repulsive, then that's someone I would never want to be friends or more with. But I'm worried this could be offensive to the trans community by appropriating their struggle, or would it help normalize being trans and bring up the conversation? I haven't done this. It's just one of those things I've thought about every time a super macho guy tells me he wants to fuck me as hello. Would love to do this for a night, even as a social experiment to film reactions. But again, these are shower thoughts, and if this is an insensitive asshole idea, I'm really sorry, and I'll STF you now. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Yeah, that's... My initial emotional reaction is that it's not a good idea. But, I mean, do what you want. Like, I don't think... So I'll say this. I don't think filming it is a good idea, because I think that might take this category into, like, pretending to be trans for entertainment purposes, which I think is not... I don't like that. I just don't like the vibe of it. If you want to do it on your own, just to see what happens, I'm not going to object, but... I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, I would not suggest, like, making content out of it. Emma Walsh says, "Dear Natalie, tour when? Love, Emma." Yeah, that's a good... I don't know. I've yet to really figure out, like, how to do live events. I have ideas for them. I don't have a lot of time, though, is the thing. Like, my ideas would be, like, I could do video screenings and Q&As and stuff, or, I don't know, even more, like, kind of a performance art or something I've envisioned in the past. But my life is so busy as it is just working on the YouTube stuff that, like, going on tour means not making videos, So... I don't know. Probably not in the near future, but it's possible it'll happen eventually. Jesse Priest says, sorry, water. "I'm a tenure-track English composition and rhetoric professor doing research on public intellectualism and academic outreach. What are some of the ways in which you think the Academy has failed to make knowledge accessible to the public? And what are some things you think academics, especially queer academics like myself, can do to use our privilege in positive ways? Thank you for the work you do." Yes, so... one thing I have that in mind is, like... it would be interesting to see if more academics, could do not necessarily exactly what I did, because I think I completely veered off the rails of anything academic with my YouTube channel, but finding a way to make content more available and more accessible on social media. Like, look at PragerU, the right-wing think tank funded YouTube channel pretending to be a university. Suppose actual academics made content like that, as in, content explaining these, like, critical topics in a way that a general audience is likely to find extremely easy to understand. I think that kind of thing is, like, really not something most academics are good at doing. It's, like, so not what you're trained to do, as, like, a research academic. And I think that I just wish that, this is sort of not, as a professor, it's not necessarily, this is not your job, but, like, I wish the way that university, like, administration was run, and the way, like, hiring happened incentivized great lecturing a little more, like great teaching, more than it emphasized research. Like, it's weird to me because, like, I find that, like, in a lot of disciplines in academia, like, your career is advanced by doing research, but being good at research and being good at teaching are often, like, not the same skill. They're always not the same skill at all. And so people who just, like, suck at teaching end up doing it and I don't know. That seems to me like a fundamentally like broken thing about the university system, is that it's, you know, it's entirely funded by students, but then like the way it works on like the professor end is not really centered around students. And in some fields, maybe that makes sense. Like if there's biomedical research going on at universities, that makes sense to me. But in like a comparative literature department or like a philosophy department, I'm so sorry to those of you who are academics in those disciplines, but the most, like 90% of the research, maybe 99% of the research that goes on in that kind of discipline doesn't matter. No one reads it. I'm so sorry. But like teaching it could be incredibly valuable if that was what was emphasized, right? If making this into like a worthwhile thing to give to undergraduates to enable them to think and feel in like more sophisticated ways and compassionate ways and informed ways, like if we could focus energy on that instead of writing pointless papers about nothing, that just seems to me like what I wish academia was. Okay, Tajdar Amir says, sorry if I mispronounced that. Tajdar Amir says, first of all, hi Natalie, first of all, thank you very much for your videos. Your video about free speech changed my mind and fixed my thoughts about it. And second, your video about pronouns changed my mind about transsexual people. As a Pakistani ex-Muslim, I have been juggling with these thoughts and ideas. And your channel is one of the most helpful places on YouTube. Once again, thank you. My question, what books on politics would you recommend for someone ignorant like me? Thank you. Gosh, I really need to set up a reading list of book recommendations. I guess I'll go ahead and plug this book called Capitalist Realism again, which is like really popular on like lefty internet right now it's by Mark Fisher. I read it. I thought it was really interesting, and I think that it's definitely not like a summary of like all politics or anything, but it's a book that like has some, I think, just like really interesting ideas in it that like will definitely get you like thinking about some of these things. So try that. Matthew Chabin says, I know we've decided how to pronounce this in the past and I can't remember. It is Matthew Chabin, right? It's like every time we go through this. Okay. We share an admiration of Milton's Satan. It occurred to me that his journey through chaos, the mercurial, rebellious hero, struggling to adapt his modality to the changing forms that assail him, could be a poetic metaphor for dysphoria/transition, though for me it is more about adolescence, especially with regard to the patriarchal Christian order. Your thoughts? Is there room to read Milton against Milton? Speak to us, Dark Mother, of your affinity for the light bringer. Okay, let's see. I think that a character like Satan in Paradise Lost is like so big and so kind of like these like heroic characters of like Homer or whatever. You can kind of read into them like any struggle you want to. I don't really see Satan as like a particularly like, so like, you know, like there's like this like the like English high school English trope of like you know, there's three kinds of struggles: man against man, man against society, and man against nature. I see. Oh, and also, wait, no, it's also man against self. I see, this is sexist language. I see I see dysphoria as more of a woman against self, man against self, person against self struggle. Where I see Satan as more of a like rebel against authority struggle. So I don't really see it as a dysphoria thing. Maybe you know, the politics around being trans, absolutely, I can put Satan into that, but I don't really see it in dysphoria. I think maybe you'd have to go dig into the man versus self literature, like the existentialist stuff. I think maybe that's closer to describing the dysphoria struggle, again with the man ver language being kind of unfortunate. Okay. Bermuda says, hey, sorry, water. I have to remind myself to stop jabbering for 1 second. Okay. Bermuda says, "Hey Natalie, I am a squatter living in Germany. From my perspective, seeing all this division in political camps all over the world is really unsettling. It's not that I'm used to it in our squat. We have very heterogeneous opinions about various topics, but at the end we come to a civil, mostly because we are too drunk to continue conclusions. Without adding more context, so you don't have to read too much of the specific situation in Germany, my questions to you are, why do we get fooled and start doing tribalistic identitarian politics again?" Well, I think that a lot of what's called identitarian or identity politics is not necessarily a bad thing, right? I think that oftentimes if a group is disadvantaged, they're justified in like calling attention to themselves as a group and their difficulties as a group. But I think that the aim of that is justice, and I think that's really different from like the kind of like white identity politics that, for instance, that happens in the United States, where that's not really about addressing an injustice. That's about maintaining a order of power. And I guess I think that tribalism. So I think that when I look at American politics, I don't really see the problem is too much tribalism. Why can't Republicans and Democrats just get along? Like, I think like things have gotten so bad that like I don't want that even. Like, to me, I see like the Republicans like representing such a bad thing or like 10 different terrible things that I think that it just needs to be opposed. And so in a sense, that tribalism I think we're stuck with. Now, the kind of inter-leftist fighting, that I do agree is a horrible distraction a lot of the time. So yeah, we do need to work on that. How do you think hijacking talking points from alt-right neo-fascist neo-Nazis is a good strategy to kill off hateful ideas in their infancy? Does it further their legitimacy as valid ideas that are worthwhile to discuss? I think it is. It depends on this talking point. Like, with R Traps Gay, I happen to think I had a really good way of doing that, but there's other kinds of like as you say, already talking points where I'm like, like the race and IQ thing. I can't think of a useful way to take over that conversation, so I'm not going to. Much love, keep doing what you do. Sorry for long posts. I really like to hear your opinion about that. P.S. You seem to like fancy German words, so here's one. Lustbarkeit. A place for an event that's enjoyable. Oh, that's a nice word. Okay. Tyler Nunez says, "Hey Natalie. First, and I'll make the praise quick, but I wanted to thank you so much for what you do. You've really opened my eyes in a lot of ways on trans issues and given me a perspective I've never seen before. Can't thank you enough for that. I heard you mention Joe Rogan during your experience on Chapo Trap House, and I guess I was wondering if you could expand on how you feel about his presence in the political YouTube space. As a former big fan of his, I now find that he, or at least his guests, tend to use his centrism to push some pretty gnarly agendas. Also, is going on his show something you would suggest left-wing activists should do, or do you feel contributing to his massive platform do more harm than good? How would you personally approach it if an opportunity to appear on his show arose? Would love to know your thoughts. Thanks so much." I don't know Joe Rogan that well. Like, I don't know his content that well, except for like, I've seen like Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro on his podcast, but he seems to me like kind of like, I do know Dave Rubin very well, as his content very well. He seems to me like kind of a Dave Rubin type, where this, as you said, what you're saying is completely correct. Like, he has a kind of centrism, which he then like uses to platform a lot of like pretty far right people who all know perfectly how to use the kind of centrist laziness to, spread their talking points. I'm not sure that like leftists are as good at doing that, especially with Joe Rogan, especially since I think that kind of centrism often is already pretty conservative and is just coy about it. So would I do a thing like that? At this point, no, not really. I don't think it's useful. At least I just don't have a desire. I used to be sort of more interested in trying to do that kind of like direct engagement stuff, but I think now I'm also like on the internet. I'm popular enough now that anything I do to attract significant attention, and so attracting attention to Joe Rogan I think would be bad. I don't always think it's bad to argue with like centrists, but in fact I often think it's worthwhile to argue with centrists. Although on a big platform like that, I mean, I think, that's the kind of thing that a kind of like well-spoken left-leaning liberal, I think could be possibly good on that kind of program. But I don't think I would be especially good. Jake says, "Hi Natalie, I've observed that in most debates I see the media, read cable news and talk shows, come down to grown-ups smashing conflicting ontologies into each other like toy monster trucks. Have I rarely see talking heads debate epistemology with the same gusto? Is that observation valid? If so, why do you think that might be?" I guess I'm wondering what exactly you have in mind by when you say ontology and epistemology, because I'm not I'm not sure conservatives and leftists have like different ways of knowing. I mean, I feel like the way that discussion is often framed is like, oh, people on the left, especially the social justice left, like they care about like experiential knowledge and like the experience that like women have and like, racial minorities have. Whereas on the right, they only care about cold, hard facts. That's the right's way of framing this topic though. And I do, so I don't know. I do think that debate happens, but it happens in a way that's basically just set up by the right, and it's set up in a kind of way that just is there to make the left look bad. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what you mean by epistemology here, so I'm not sure I can exactly answer your question, but I do think that, the state of the discourse is so low that a lot of times like thinking about how do we know things is not really like, that's not even on the table. And I think part of that is that kind of conversation is kind of by nature pretty philosophical. And I think the people who watch political debates are often like not really there for that level of discourse. Now, could someone very talented maybe make people care? Probably. I mean, that's often something I try to do on YouTube. So who knows? Caleb Bromo says, "Are you ever tempted to redo any of your old videos with higher production value or evolved opinions? Are you ever tempted to remove any old videos?" I asked that as a fairly early subscriber who recently rewatched a bunch of your old videos and think they hold up really well. Very quotable. Also, I'll be cooking dinner tonight during your stream. Any tips for homemade pizza? Okay, so do I get tempted to redo old videos? No. But what I do is basically revisit similar topics, or often I just did that comment. I just uploaded a commentary stream for the $5 plus patrons where I did Pickup Artist, that old video of mine. And I guess what I ended up deciding, realizing is oh, this is kind of about the same kind of bad ideas that a lot of men have about sex and relationships that are basically let's move the camera down, are basically the same kinds of ideas I talk about in the incels video, and then again in the R Traps Gay video. So I do revisit these topics. I just kind of they just kind of come up in different situations. Often my videos are about a particular thing, but a more general issue does tend to continue recurring, I've never made a video called toxic masculinity, but I try not to say the word toxic masculinity because people just hate, men just hate the word toxic masculinity, so I just don't use it since it drives people crazy. But that's what all these videos are about, isn't it? Yeah, do I think about deleting old videos? Oh yeah, constantly. I mean, I'm not even I haven't even begun to be at peace with the fact that I have all this like pre-transition stuff online. Like I'm like kind of horrified by it myself, but I also just don't. I'm just not convinced that deleting it actually will solve any of these problems. So I'm standing my, I guess like standing my ground, as it were, for now, in terms of like keeping that stuff up. Homemade pizza. Put lots of spicy red pepper flakes on it. I don't know. Make your own tomato sauce. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like most of the advice I would give is just do more work instead of less work. Just not always what you want when you're making dinner for a weeknight. I'm going to get some more water. I have kind of a cold right now, so I've got kind of a sore throat, but I am gonna get some more water and I'll be right back. Okay, let's see. Ugh. So much. I hate the way this computer screen looks reflected on my face. I just got a new monitor, that's why it's much brighter than the other one was. Let's go turn the brightness down. We're not doing this right now. Okay, where were we? Okay, Rob Rulin says, Natalie, wow, thank you so very much for the last video. Fuck 'em if there's controversies, you're performing actual harm reduction. I'm a type 1 who is aspiring to be a type 2, and I assume this is men who are attracted to trans women, and not there mostly through lack of opportunity. I dated a trans woman for the first time back in 2016. She was very dysmorphic and very sexually inexperienced. While she and I are no longer romantically involved, we have a lovely friendship. At the time, I tried to find good information about how to be intimate with a trans woman, but almost everything was exploitative or otherwise unhelpful. I also made a conscious decision to not go to porn to learn. I wish this video had existed back then. This was exactly what I needed. Thank you for helping me shed the last vestiges of intertwined trans and homophobia that this culture instilled in me. The video may have run long, but I think my brain really did need 44 minutes and change to completely talk that bullshit to death. I'd love to tell you more of my story, but don't want to bore the stream. Thank you again so very much. I can't wait for the next one. You are very welcome. Glad to be helpful. Okay, Dang says, hi, I've recently read an article on populism, and it really reminded me of the Economist article you wrote in that described you as a populist. According to the theorist Ernesto Laclau, populism isn't a political position like conservative, liberal, leftist, etc., but instead it represents the aesthetic, psychological, non-rational aspects of political movements. You could say that populism is to politics as rhetoric is to debate. So, while fascism has a large populist component to it, the same can be said for Obama's 2008 campaign. So, in a sense, it is very accurate to call you a populist, since your channel has a large focus on the aesthetic aspects of politics. I'm not sure how this rambling is going to turn into a question, but I just wanted to talk about an interesting connection between something I've read and your work. So, is this something that you want to explore more? Do you have any thoughts on this topic that weren't expressed in your videos? Yeah, I think that understanding of populism, I think that I don't object to being called a populist in that, and if that's the understanding of populism we're using, I think that, that actually does kind of describe, but what I'm confused about is, what politics is not populism then? Like a philosopher king, you know what I mean? Because I just think that people, I think institutional politics, I feel like populism is often used by people who are sort of close to the center to describe either the far right or the far left as they see it. And to me, the notion that centrist politics is based on reason, whereas far right and far left politics are based on some kind of aesthetic or emotional thing, that is a nonsensical pretense on the centrist part. Their thing is based just as much on aesthetics and emotion as everyone else, and they just think that they're more grounded somehow because they have this institutional legitimacy. So I do think that some politicians are more populist than others. Some people really have nothing to do. Donald Trump is like this, nothing to do except appeal to pretty manipulative strategies of getting people's lowest emotions to vote. There's no, it's not really driven by any kind of real policy thing. Whereas I think someone like Ocasio-Cortez, she's very policy driven in her way, but she also knows how to, is it obvious I stand this woman? She also knows how to, talk to people, talk to a mass audience. We need some new music here. Okay. It seems like Laclau is one of those unintelligible continental theorists that you love. Yes, it does sound that way. I've never read Laclau, but I know he's part of that group of people. Edward says, what do you do a video in more depth about housing, and will you do a video in more depth about housing in Baltimore? Do you believe that a mandatory program requiring people to work or to 15 hours a week for free housing and healthcare could work in a major U.S. city or anywhere? Well, I probably wouldn't do a video about that because the direction my channel has gone is much less I guess I don't talk that would be a very dry video. It's very difficult to make housing in Baltimore into an exciting topic, especially since I've already covered that a couple of times now. But I do think it's maybe something I can see myself tweeting about more if it becomes more urgently relevant to the news or something like that. Do I think a program requiring people to work for free housing and healthcare? I think that if we're talking, if people don't have housing, I don't think requiring them to work helps, because I think that people who don't have housing have an intense, incredibly difficult job working as is. So a program that would hire them and pay them housing and give them housing as part of hiring them. Now that's a thought. How did I get an interview with Chelsea Manning, and can I help you get one? If I have multiple questions, is it okay to create more Patreon accounts to ask? Sure. Chelsea, I mean, basically every leftist trans woman knows Chelsea. Can I help you get an interview with her? No, unfortunately, no. Okay. Jim Van Wyck says, comment, thanks for taking the chance with the Travis video. If it stops even one trans woman from being beaten, and it likely will, then the world is a little better. Question, in your violence video, you said violence is fun. Have your feelings about violence and aggression changed now that you have less testosterone? Come to think of it, yeah, I guess kind of. I never really thought about this, but like, I have kind of lost the enjoyment of violence a little bit. I don't know if that has to do with hormones, but I know cis women who love violence. but I guess, I don't know, maybe I have less rage, but, or something. That is partially hormonal, but violence is fun, I still think, is a valid observation about human psychology. Like, I think that there's like maybe this idea of like a death drive or some kind of destructive urge. There seems to be some kind of thing to that. Like, there's some kind of basic like attraction we have to destroying each other or destroying things. I think that like, I think women destroy each other too. Women destroy things too. We're just sneakier about it. Michelle Eggleston says, which of your views are you least comfortable with? Like, which of my publicly expressed views or which of my like secret views? Yeah, you guys don't get to know about my secret views. Oh God, let's see. You're really making me, it's like, you're like, basically, Michelle, you're basically asking me like, what opinions do you have that would get you in trouble? Like, I mean, do I have a view that I'm just not comfortable with? I guess like some thoughts I have about transness. Like, so I have like a lot of like feelings about maybe my own transition. Let's just, you know what? So like, I guess I think like I sometimes have, here's a view I have that I'm not comfortable with. I think that it's like people sometimes act like there's a clear line between gender dysphoria, which you're never allowed to criticize a trans person for experiencing, and internalized transphobia and self-loathing, which you are allowed to criticize a trans person for having. And I think that there is no clear line between those two things, and it may be impossible to draw a clear line between those two things. So we talk about dysphoria like it's this medical, individual, natural thing, and we talk about like self-loathing like it's this external thing that's foisted upon us and that we're somewhat morally reprehensible for reproducing. But like, a lot of times, isn't there some relation between these two things? Like, that's something that I think that I'm not comfortable with and that I kind of need to figure out, I think. Keith Gaylor says, Dear Natalie, I have so enjoyed introducing friends to your thoughtful, challenging, and very entertaining video essays. Thank you, Keith. I'm an asexual father of two, which really seems to confuse a lot of people. Is there any chance you would consider making a video on asexuality? Thanks. Keith, P.S. I ran across this article from Teen Vogue, which has run some amazing political and cultural articles the last few years. Yes, Teen Vogue is actually like one of the great leftist magazines of our time, which is fascinating. And I'm glad. Yeah, let's see. Asexuality. It's certainly, I don't know if I would do an entire video about it. It's certainly likely, I think, that I'll say something about it in a future video. Yeah, I think that's something that, I think it's something that most people don't understand very well. It's actually something I could probably stand to understand better, because I'm not sure I fully understand asexuality myself. So if anyone knows of like creators who have like done really good content on like asexual experience, send that my way, because I'm curious. I would like to learn more, because it's asexuality is not really my experience. Although I guess I know some asexual people who have like have given accounts of their asexuality that I find very sympathetic. Like, I know some asexual people talk about, like, you know, having sex not because they really want to have sex, but because they want the like intimacy that comes along with it. I can kind of sympathize with that, because can I? Because I do want to have sex, but like, I also do like intimacy. The intimacy is like something, is definitely one of the things I enjoy about sex. So it makes sense to me, like, why you would isolate that part of it. Armand says, hello, Natalie. I like stuff. More specifically, I like the Contra choker from your last video. How much will you sell it to me for? I need it in my life. On a slightly more serious note, thoughts on existential comics. P.S. Come to London. It's not as grey as it looks. Yeah, the Contra choker. God, I've gotten so many requests for Contra chokers. If I knew a way to make that into merch, that would absolutely, seems like it would sell very well. Yeah, I don't know. I've actually sometimes thought about like auctioning off props that I've in costume items that I've used in videos. I think I would have to give the proceeds of that to charity lest I be guillotined. But I have considered it, because I do have a whole lot of stuff lying around, a lot of which I'm probably never going to use again. And I don't know. It might be an interesting. I think auctioning things is just a bad look for like a leftist, you know what I mean? But I mean, if it was all going to, like, say, the Trevor Project, you know, I don't know. It's a thing I've thought about. Thoughts on existential comics? I like existential comics. I haven't read that in a while. It's very like thing everyone sends you when you're a philosophy major, and people did indeed send it to me. You know, it's good. That's my thought. Jessica Loganov says, I absolutely loved the point you made in your video about how being attracted to trans women is straight for men because it's straight men who are attracted to trans women. So elegant. That being said, I want to ask, as a trans lesbian who has been living as a woman for the last year, how do I get gay men to stop hitting on me? Also, do I need to worry about gay men accusing me of trapping them into being bi? What are the rules? So, why do gay men hit on trans women? There's a few reasons why they could be doing that. One is that they mistake you for a male cross-dresser. You could tell them I'm a woman. That might start, but that might not put all of them off. I mean, a lot of gay men are like willing to mess around with women. You know, it's been known to happen a lot. You know, so when it comes to like suggesting that, like, so I'm bisexual, right? So people who are not bisexual think that bisexuals are just like lying attention whores. And bisexuals, we all secretly believe that everyone else is really bisexual. But you know, I understand that, like, you know, it's kind of like not, it's like kind of problematic, I guess, to say that like some gay people have, you know, a little bi tendency, but some gay people have a little bi tendency. And I mean, there's gay men who are attracted to me. I've actually like toyed with the notion of sleeping with a gay man. But I don't know if I would enjoy that or not. I know trans women have done it. I actually almost considered talking about that in my Art Traps gay video. I was like, why muddy the waters with these complications? I don't know. If gay men hit on me, I don't enjoy being hit on. I mean, I don't think it's gonna lead anywhere. But some gay men also just like hitting on women, just like as a playful thing, you know. And I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. I don't think you need to be worried about trapping them into being bi. Okay. Neela Ernswa says, or Niala Ernswa. Tell me how to pronounce that right. I'm a mod on an 18... Let me drink water. I'm a mod on an 18 plus BDSM community Discord server. Right now, we have 3 channels for NSF, not safe for work selfies, one for female, male, and neutral. Most of the mods want to make one channel and combine the 3 into not safe for work selfies because we think this will make it a safer and more inviting place for folks all over the gender spectrum. When we proposed this, it was met with instant dislike because no one wants to scroll through a bunch of dick pics, which is all you find in the not safe for work male selfies. Do you have any advice on how we can make the server more friendly for everyone? Or is one not safe for work selfies channel the best option? And we should do it despite the small protest. I don't know. This is why I've always resisted being the moderator of a Discord server because people come to me all the time with these kinds of questions, and I'm just like, I'm not good at I'm not really a dictator at heart. I'm really not. I want someone else to make decisions for me. But since you've asked me to be the guest dictator, I don't know. I think the people who want to see naked selfies generally do have in mind a kind of either they want men or women or trans people. I think male, female, male, and neutral is awkward though, because what's neutral? Neutral just non-binary? Does it mean trans? What does it does it mean ambiguous? What does neutral mean? So I think that you just can't win. Is what I think. Neil, I'm sorry to say that no one will be happy with. There's going to be people who are unhappy with whatever you choose. So I think that if there seems like a majority opinion, I would just try to make that work and just accept that as the moderator of a Discord, you're just going to have a lot of discontent people, and that's just kind of how it always is in my experience. Okay, Joshua Analyx says, "Hello, Natalie. Your use of Brandenburg Concerto No. 2 in your last video was delightful. Since the same music was used by William F. Buckley Jr. Oh no. As the theme for his show Firing Line, it got me wondering, could classical music be employed in the realm of mainstream political theater today, or would it inevitably be perceived as snobbish?" I mean, my channel uses it constantly, and I don't usually get accused of being snobbish. Astonishingly, it's not something that people accuse me of very often. Unusual for a channel that involves discussion of political philosophy accompanied by classical music, but I've somehow found a way to not seem snobbish. I think that, I used that Brandenburg Concerto over a lesson about how to use your penis like a lady. So I think the subject matter removes any possibility of snobbishness. And I think that, William F. Buckley is possibly the most snobbish person in world history. So, the combination of that music with him is going to come off as snobbery. It's all about context, I think. If people can tell that you're using classical music because you're trying to make yourself look educated and smart, that's going to read as snobbishness. But if you're using it for a different reason, ironic, sort of to create an ironic effect of the dissonance between a Brandenburg Concerto and talking about girl dick, then I don't think it comes off as snobbish. Avi Finkel says, "What is a neoliberal?" A neoliberal is a person we don't like. I think that's basically what it comes down to. A neoliberal is a person who leftists think is too reactionary, but is not necessarily an outright conservative. Usually I think it refers, usually to answer your question less glibly, there's the word, I think that, and usually what people mean by neoliberal is someone who believes in a kind of Ayn Rand type or more Thatcherian Reaganite economics, or some version of that, maybe that with a little bit of a smiley face drawn on or something. I think that's usually what we're talking about. Jennifer Palmer says, wow, Jennifer Palmer, you've been with me a long time, haven't you? That name. I'm like, I've read that name over the credits in a man's voice, haven't I? Okay. Hi, Natalie. Do you meditate or have any interest in meditation? If so, any suggested books or other resources you would recommend? I've just gotten into it thanks to a very accessible and well-written book called Mental Resilience, The Power of Clarity by Kamal Sarma. I've been surprised at how helpful it is, but you don't have to take my word for it. Reading rainbow sound effect, yes. So, I don't really meditate, no. Should I? Probably. The closest I've come is my lash lift appointment today. The esthetician was very kind of had a kind of new agey practice. I really liked it, actually. She was very calming, and she played meditation music and talked to me about vortexes and chakras, and while she applied dangerous chemicals to my eyelashes. it was I liked it, but I guess that's about as much meditation as I've gotten done in the last few years. But yeah, I should probably get into it because there's a lot of demons in my skull, and I could probably stand to work on, silencing them a few times a week. Yeah, I could probably stand to read a book or something about it. Megan Novak says, do you have any tattoos or would you ever get one? Thanks for all you do. I do not have any tattoos. I've thought of getting them before, but at this point, your first tattoo, if I already had one tattoo, I'd probably get a bunch of them, but because I have no tattoos, I'm it's my virginity. I have to this is a big decision whether I want to lose this. I know that's nonsense, but I don't know. There's part of me that's either I want to be very tattooed or not tattooed at all, I either want to be Jeffree Star or a marble statue. So that's how I feel. Someone in the chat says mouthfeel tramp stamp. Perfect. Lauren Lucian Rose says, hey Natalie. Hold on a second. Let me drink. Been watching for a long time. Also, I just checked, and Jennifer Palmer has not been a patron that long, so I'm just completely crazy. I just thought, I think there was a something Palmer. There was somebody Palmer in my early patron credits. Lauren Lucian Rose says, hey Natalie, been watching for a long time and only recently became a patron. Love your content. My question, when you were not as well known and didn't feel the social pressure of others watching and waiting, how did you find the motivation to continue working on your art/craft? Thank you so much for your huge inspiration to me. You're welcome. I guess what I thought, how did I find inspiration? Well, I mean, even at the time I was getting a little bit of attention, and I'm such a shameless attention seeker that that was enough to egg me on. But no, I mean, I honestly have not to be super arrogant about this, but I actually do have I think what is a real artistic drive. I just want to create something. I want to express myself, and even if the audience is small, if there's it's worth it to me just to I have to get it out, I have this I have all this stuff in my head, and I just need to hopefully not just I need to turn it into something. I need to sculpt a thing and it's a need I have. So being inspired or being motivated in that way actually is not really something I've ever had a problem with. That's not necessarily the superior way to be. I'm sure there's great artists and people who do have trouble with motivation, but that's not really an issue I've ever had. Cuttlefish says, so was your lipstick red enough for Red Lipstick Boy? It was. Oh man, I can't believe you remember that. Okay. Christopher J. Bataro says, "Hi Natalie, 3 questions and a story. 1, would you date a guy shorter than you?" Oh yeah, I mean most of the people I date are shorter than me because I'm very tall, but yes. 2, do you like dogs? I do. I'm not like I didn't grow up with dogs, so I don't know that much about dogs, but like I enjoy other people's dogs. Story. I'm a cis guy and most of my guy friends fit in either cis machismo or cis effeminate categories. Even the most machismo of my guy friends have told stories about being attracted to trans women, so much so that they hit on them and got rejected and walked away with their tail between their legs, which I suppose anecdotally corroborates the idea that trans women can be very feminine and sexy, which can/will attract people who are into that. Sucks that some guys get all aggro when they think they are tricked. Yes. Yes, it does. Oh, yeah. There's no limit on how barbarically heterosexual a man can be and still be interested in trans women. That's absolutely true. 3, how the fuck do I put line breaks into my comments? I tried command return, but it just posts my comment immediately. My guess is the only way to do it would be to type it out in a like Word app or like a notes app and then copy and paste it into the comment. Sydney Emo says, "Fluff question. Yay. Do you like the rain?" I do. I love the rain. The inherent eroticism of the rain. Yeah. The rain is my vibe. Also, a reminder to please take care of yourself. That's all. Thanks, Sydney. I'm drinking water, taking care of myself. Michael Malvasio says, "Hi, Natalie. Let me work for you. You also make me want to visit Baltimore. Haha, obsessed. Keep up the good work. You badass. You give me strength." Thanks, Michael. I'm hiring an assistant for March, and we're going to test that out. So I actually am good for now, but thank you for your offer. We'll see how things work out for me. Okay, Alice says, "Hi, Natalie. I was wondering what it's like for you after releasing a video. How much time do you spend keeping tabs on how it's being received? How do you respond to praise and criticism? How much weight do you place on the number of views you get? How do you balance listening to feedback with listening to your own voice and making time for your own life?" So the truth is that when a video comes out, I do kind of obsess. Like I read so many of the YouTube comments, even though I shouldn't. I read so many of the tweets about it, even though I shouldn't. I read what people say on Reddit, even though I shouldn't. As far as how many views it gets, it sort of depends on the video. There's some videos I make, I'm like, I want this video to get a lot of views. And then I do hope that it gets a lot of views. And it always does because I've had just a ridiculous streak of success in my YouTube career. Like I've never once had a video like underperform really. That's not exactly true. Earlier on there were some videos that didn't do as well as I wanted, but I think I occasionally do videos where I'm just like, I don't care if no one watches this, I want to do it anyway. Like the aesthetic was like that. A lot of my videos on trans topics are kind of like that. R traps gay accepted, and pronouns I wanted to do really well, and it did. But yeah, the aesthetic, I didn't really expect that to attract much attention. It's just something I wanted to do for myself. So the fact that does in fact have somewhat, I mean, all my videos have so many views now, like 500,000 views each. So like, it's just, there's nothing for me to complain about. How do I respond to praise? By slowly becoming numb to it. I suppose is the honest answer. How do I respond to criticism? By dying inside and fuming over it for hours. How do I balance the feedback with listening to my own voice and making time for your own life? Yeah, that is a challenge. Like, I find that if I spend too much time on social media, it actually is hard for me to start working on a video because I'm like so caught up in like what other people want me to do and what other people think and what other people are gonna think and what other people are gonna say. So what I often will do is just like when I need to start working on a video or need to start thinking of ideas for the next one, I'll just like go to an art museum and like look and just walk around for like a day or an afternoon. And oftentimes then I'll start like just getting ideas and the ideas that will come. You have to stop social media if you want to like have any artistic integrity at all, because you do need to separate yourself from that to like make room for inspiration to sort of come into your life. Okay. Scarlet Crow says, not a question, no need to read aloud. Okay. I guess I won't then. I'll read it later, Scarlett. I'm going to read it now, actually, just while drinking. So in short, Scarlett, I've read your question. I've read your comment, rather. I really appreciate your support of me, and if you think it's worth it to be in the credits, I appreciate your support. Also, I do not want you to bankrupt yourself on my account. I am funded quite well as far as artists on the internet go, and you have to put the oxygen mask on your own face before you help the person next to you. So I'm not the slightest bit offended if you're come and go. That's fully allowed. Okay, all of your support is appreciated. Whatever is doable for you. Toasters says, hi Nat. First time asking questions since I became a patron. Love you. Thanks, Toasters, and a welcome. Why did I say that so weirdly? Just going crazy. I've got two quick questions for you. One, in the comments of What is Gender, Adam Neely says that you two went to Berkeley together. If this isn't a meme, could you talk about your experience there? How did you get in? Why'd you leave? Any advice for a gender questioning guy looking to apply there? Also, while you were there, did you meet Adam's friend, Ben Levin? He's my second favorite YouTuber, and his band Bent Knee is incredible. Definitely check him out if you haven't already. Okay, so Toasters, this is going to blow your mind. But when I was at Berkeley, so I was a piano student, and I used to jam with Adam Neely and Ben Levin like semi-regularly. So that was a thing that was happening in 2008. I was a piano performance student. I got in after spending my entire high school years like doing nothing but music basically, and I left because I really wanted a general education and not just like a music education, because I was getting really curious about all this like philosophy shit. And that's what led me through that whole tangent of my life. Even though really I've always wanted to be an entertainer and not a philosopher and not an activist and not a commentator. And YouTube scratches my entertainer-ish itch. My entertainer itch, while also putting to use my other skills. So it's really, I've stumbled into the perfect job for me. So I would say go to Berkeley, meet a bunch of people, take some classes. A lot of the best people don't graduate Berkeley because the point is to work as a musician. You don't need a degree to work as a musician. That's my advice about Berkeley, is go, if you get in, go for like at least a semester or two, meet everyone you can, go to social events, jam with everybody, meet everybody, network with everybody, make music with everybody. That's what you're really getting out of it, not a piece of paper. Who do you think is better in bed, Shapiro or Peterson? Oh, Peterson. Daddy. Such a daddy. Rhizome says, "Hey Natalie, I'm a new patron, but I really love you and your content. Thanks. Pretty straightforward question for you. Thoughts on Steven Pinker? I know he's formerly a linguist, but two of his recent books have been more socio-historically oriented and super wiggish and shitty. I'm pretty sure Jordan Peterson is a big fan. Just want to know what your take is. Also, any tips for studying continental philosophy, crit theory, post-structuralism, and a grad program?" Yeah, I think Steven Pinker has some good things to say about psychology, his own field. Like, I'm sure he does, because he's... I've enjoyed some of his writing in the past, but I agree that when it comes to social topics, he's reactionary. And I think that he's, like Jordan Peterson, pretty anti-trans. If you look through, for instance, some of the books he's blurbed. Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with your general assessment that Pinker is shitty, as we say on the left. Yes, he is shitty. And tips for studying continental philosophy, blah, 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 in a grad program. Depends why you want to do that. If you want a career, or if you want to just get something out of it, I would say try not to go into a whole lot of debt doing that, because that's just not advisable in general, I would say. So that's my tip. Ed Zarin says, "Hi Natalie, what's been going on in your world in the last week or so? I really enjoyed your latest video, but wow, some of the makeup was crazy. All the best, Ed." Thanks, Ed. What's been going on in my world the last week? Well, I'm getting ready to film my next video, which I'm gonna have to film soon. So I actually have to write a script in like 4 or 5 days, which is like really fast for me, considering I don't have an outline yet at all. So I have been designing costume stuff for the next video, or at least putting it together. I'm thinking about makeup for that next video. And I have been, there's going to be some journalists filming me film this next video. So that's one reason for the urgent timeline. So I'm sort of getting ready for that. Austin Harry says, "What is your optimistic timeline for political change in an influential country? If the answer isn't never, what about realistically? Thank you. Much love, Austin." Thanks, Austin. Well, what does political change mean? I think political change has happened in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years. Political change is always kind of happening, right? So I don't know what counts as like the threshold for political change, but I would say like I think significant progress can be made in 20 years. Like I really do. I think it's happened before. It can happen again, and I have to say that where my most optimistic about some of the like SJW so-called issues, like, because I think that it's actually the changes required to make progress in those issues are fairly minor. And, a younger generation is coming up right now that understands trans people much better. Race is, it's more intractable because racism is like as old as this country and it will not fucking die. And the economic stuff, like, God, it is so hard to get America to be remotely socialist. It's so hard to get America to be social democrat. Like, so as important as I think that is, I do think it takes longer to push that stuff forward. But I think maybe when people get sick of not having health care, that might, not maybe what does it is they're terrible, or not just not having health care, because people have health care, I think, but like when people get sick of like this ridiculous broken insurance bureaucracy, and also like notice the fact, I don't know, I think change can happen in a decade. Like I think it's possible. Am I optimistic that it will happen? Not sure, unfortunately. Nina Jensen says, "Hi Natalie, I found you recently as I've been avoiding political YouTube as it's usually really anti-trans." Yes, it is. Question: how does the intersectionality of white computer programmer trans women relate to other categories of white trans women? A stupid, irrelevant question. I just found it so hilarious that computer programmer trans women was explicitly named as a group. Also, sorry if it's said wrong. I'm a comp sci. I'd rather ask it in Venn diagrams if I could. Sincerely, Nina. I don't think that computer programmer trans women. I don't think that's necessarily different from any other like white, like respectably employed trans women. I just think that so many of the trans women in that demographic are computer programmers. It's like, I actually don't even, I'm sure there's like partial explanations for why that is. I'm not sure why though that it's like such a thing. I don't know. I feel like I'm like the odd one out. I don't know how a computer works. I don't think the intersectionality is different from computer programmers from any other white middle-class trans woman, though. I think that when I say respectable, what I'm doing is contrasting, trans women with like a computer programmer job with a lot of trans women do sex work, which is, of course, work. And it is real work. It's not respectable in the sense that there's, a stigma against it. Respectable in that kind of respectable, like respectability politics sense, right? It ought to be respectable, but isn't, in other words. Okay, what are we doing? Sam Mendes says, hey Natalie, what are your thoughts on Sam Harris? I'm a fan of his books on meditation and free will, but he seems to have fallen out of favor with many people on the left. Just wanted to know what you thought of his work. Thank you for your amazing content. Yeah, Sam Harris, I kind of was done with him like in 2010, something like that, when he started writing about racial profiling and advocating for it. But he's only gotten worse since then. He's now like basically like on the full on like race realist train. And I just think the guy like has been like, saying a bunch of stuff for a long time that in retrospect just seems like kind of a bunch of racist dog whistles about like, Muslims. But now he also like is, he basically believes like, racialist science and like I just think he's kind of a shithead. I don't stand. Someone in the chat says T1J has a good Sam Harris video. I actually haven't watched that, but T1J's videos are very measured and balanced, so I would definitely suggest watching his take on that. Okay, I need more water. I'll be fast. Always the hair. Okay, let's see. Kelly Zeho says, hey beautiful, so thanks Sobek you did this today because I'm in the process of filming a video debunking TERF talking points. You already know who I am. I certainly tweet you enough, lol. But for those watching, I'm a cis lesbian ally who recently came out as non-binary, and I dissected radical feminist discourse to find points of commonality between trans activist discourse, and surprise, surprise, there is a ton of overlap, of course. And I did this because TERFs often cite some very reactionary and very wrong feminist academics who basically align themselves with right-wingers and whose commonality is their biologically essentialist views on the immutable nature of sex. I really tried my best to get people to see this. I basically finished the script. I just wanted to ask you what you think would be the most important point of focus that a cis lesbian could take in making something like this. What would be the most helpful way I can exercise the hold my voice could potentially have over TERFs. I'm sorry this is so long. You took me from planning an elaborate suicide, oh gosh, because of health problems to finding purpose again in activism and creating. I'm glad you're still with us, Kelly. You also helped me to come to terms with my non-binary identity. I feel so indebted to you, and I just want to help nudge the discourse in a responsible way. P.S. Would you mind telling me what your computer setup is to edit your videos on Adobe Premiere? My computer is laggy AF and not sure what to buy. Okay. Yes. Well, thank you, Kelly. That's very kind of you to say that. I'm glad to hear you're doing better. I'm actually sort of thinking of doing a kind of video about like gender critical feminism later this year that aims to do sort of something similar to what you're describing. So I'm actually not sure yet what is the most important thing. I think something that I would like to do is put out a kind of like Twitter like request for people to get in touch with me if they have been TERFs in the past, and it describe to me like what kinds of feelings, experiences, and thoughts led them to be that way, and what made them change their mind. Because I'm actually not sure like if there's one way of changing a cis lesbian's mind about trans women. I would say like a critical thing to do. This is sort of more of a not to do thing than a to do thing. A critical thing not to do is to say something that could even remotely be interpreted as you saying that cis lesbians should sleep with trans women, or that they are like bigoted for not being attracted. Because I think that kind of stuff just like for like I think fully understandable, not really justifiable, but for I think reasons that are very understandable, that really goes over badly, because no one likes being told who they should date. And it's especially true for gay and lesbian people who have had to fight very hard for their dating preferences. And so you have to be able to have this conversation about the womanhood of trans women without seeming like you're, being like you have to date trans women. So I would say definitely avoid that. What is the most important point to get across? I mean, in a way, it might help to use like a pragmatic kind of reasoning, like, look, you don't, I get that you don't think trans women share your relevant woman experiences, but like trans women, the world does not treat us as men. And so like asking us to stay in male spaces and to like, effectively politically be treated as men is like completely unrealistic. So I think that is kind of a good kind of point to make. But like I said, I haven't fully thought about this. When I do fully think about this, I might attempt a similar video myself. My computer is it's a custom built Origin computer. I would say that I don't know exactly the specifications because I am not really very tech savvy, to be honest myself. But what you want for video editing is the main thing to prioritize is the CPU. You want a lot of power there. So like a modern, up-to-date, like really powerful CPU is what you want. I would just do some research on like video editing computers, and if you're interested in upgrading. These things do tend to be quite expensive, unfortunately. PC is cheaper than Mac still, I believe. If you're interested in getting tech savvy yourself, you could do your own build. That can be cheaper, I'm told, although I'm not sure how much cheaper it is. Okay, Professor Woland says, "Hi Natalie, mad props for the last video, especially for the vulnerable personal stories. I wonder a lot about the best way to help change the discourse around trans rights. I lead a privileged life in a progressive area, so I can afford to talk to ambivalent or hostile people online in ways that other trans folks shouldn't have to. Your work is incredible at engaging that kind of audience. I'd like to reach a similar crowd, but can only read, write, and maybe think worth a damn. From what you've seen, do text-based conversations ever change people's minds? When someone posts their sizzling hot take about trans people being mentally ill on Reddit for the nth time, is it worth leaving a comment for innocent bystanders who click on it? If not, what else besides YouTube are impressionable young men paying attention to? Yeah, I think if you can write efficient, like as in don't waste your whole day on this, but like if you can write efficient, articulate rebuttals to that kind of thing on Reddit, I do think it's helpful. Yeah, because I think that even if it's just something very short, like it lets the person, it's like the ratio on Twitter. The good thing about the ratio is that it like lets everyone see that people don't agree with them. So when people feel that everyone basically agrees with them, they get emboldened. So if people post transphobic stuff, often what happens is like overwhelmingly the response to that is also transphobic, which means people feel they have like, their transphobia is a thing that's basically socially permissible. It's widely accepted. That makes them more and more confident in their transphobia, in their publicly expressing their transphobia. So to dissent is to like cast a vote against that, and I think it does make a difference, especially when lots of people do it. When someone like we've recently seen with Graham Linehan, when that guy posts transphobic stuff and gets ratioed as fuck on Twitter, does that? I think that sends a message. I think it sends a very effective message to him, yes. Although I think he's impervious to all messages at this point, perhaps. But it sends a message to anyone who sees that tweet that like, this guy's saying something that's not popular and accepted. That's good. That matters. Charlotte Van Peteghem says, just pronounce my name as if it's German. It'll be close enough. Okay, I think I basically got it. Hey Nat, I recently realized I'm straight. Pre-transition, I was basically asexual, aromantic. I found this out by realizing I have feelings for a coworker. However, I don't really feel confident enough to do anything about those feelings. Any advice on how to deal with this? Also, I'm sorry for basically using these AMAs to get some personal advice from you. Okay, so the first thing I will say is this may be hard to hear, because if you've previously been asexual and aromantic and you're just now having sexual and romantic feelings for a person, that probably seems very exciting. A coworker is not a good place to start because what happens with coworkers is if things don't go well or someone gets hurt, you're stuck with that person and you have to keep seeing them. That is a high pressure situation, and it makes it a bad person to experiment with. I mean, do these things happen? Sometimes does it work out? Sometimes, of course it does. But if you can, unless you absolutely cannot stop thinking about them, I would advise against the coworker dating thing. It really leads to a lot of problems. I would say maybe find someone else who's kind of inexperienced and learn together. Don't put too much pressure on each other. Sort of discover these things at the same time. I think that can be a kind of a safe and a low pressure way to kind of feel out your sexuality, is to find someone else that's somewhat equivalent to your experience level. They can be a little more experienced, but someone who you can kind of learn together with. Paula Auzane says, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, I'm so sorry, Paula. Hello from Latvia. I love your videos, and I haven't found anyone quite as brilliant, insightful, and hilarious out there. Oh, thank you. Sorry for the dark question, but asking as a schizophrenic person who battles with near constant thoughts about suicide, what's your opinion on the right to die idea /movement? I'm not that familiar with this right to die movement. I'm familiar with the cause of euthanasia, but remember, thoughts about suicide as a result of being schizophrenic, that's not a good reason to die. So you definitely need to make sure that you're getting good psychiatric care, because having a mental illness is something that you can work on, and that's something you can heal from. And those kinds of thoughts that you're having, suicidal thoughts, it's possible to make that go away through therapy. So do not get, I would say, thinking about the political right to die when you do not have to be in that situation. That's something that people who are sort of terminally ill or have, I think, it's the kind of thing that they need to be thinking about right to die. You, Paula, do not need to be thinking about right to die. You need to be finding how to live and getting the treatment that you need. That's my thoughts about right to die. Emmy Harris says heart. Vicky Lynn says, I'm wondering if you'd use your platform to promote the use of pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a daily pill that can help prevent people from contracting HIV. I take it myself because as a trans woman who sometimes has sex with men, that puts me at greater risk of contracting HIV. I read the book The Ethical Slut by Janet W. Hardy. One of the things she says that we as women need to reclaim the word slut. Also, as ethical sluts, we have an obligation to learn about STIs and how to prevent them. Finally, would you do me the honor of saying, how dare you? I love your work. Vicky Lynn. Thank you, Vicky. How dare you? Yeah, I think PrEP, I'm not on it, but it's obviously like an angel choir moment for a lot of people. So would I talk about it? Yeah, it's conceivable that I would talk about it, especially if I decided to get on it. It kind of depends like what lifestyle decisions I decide to make. I'm maybe getting to a point where that might be a thing I want to consider. Thank you. Progressive Joe says, who will you be supporting in the 2020 Democratic primary? I don't know. We'll see. I think as, more people announce their plans. I currently don't have anyone I'm particularly looking at. That's not a very good answer. I'm sorry. Check back next year. Okay. Sunchild says, hi, Nat. First time since joining Patreon asking a question. So I have this friend that is terribly upset she just found out her boyfriend loves Jordan Peterson. Oh no. What should she do? We tried to just have him watch your video to no avail. God. Background, all three of us are in the same PhD in clinical psychology program. Me and her want to specialize in LGBT issues. He's a generalist. She's pansexual and I'm genderqueer. He's cishet, probably a libertarian. Oh, sweetie, your friend has fucked up. Your friend is fucked up bad. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think that if this guy is like a diehard Petersonite, like that just might have to not work unless you're willing to just not talk about it. That's really your friend's judgment call to make. If someone's a diehard Petersonite, I really don't know how to make them stop. I'm afraid my video is my best effort at that. If you've tried that and it didn't work, I'm sorry, I have nothing. Daniel Gottschling says, with 2020 on the horizon, the yellow vests in France, and a crucial election in May for the European Union, and a more and more destabilized South America, who's your pick to win All-Stars 4? With the stipulation that I did not finish Friday's episode, I'm like halfway through it on Netflix, Manila. I think. I've been really loving her this season. Teed Rockwell says, I see this as the fundamental dilemma of identity politics. 1. We now recognize that judgments about racism, sexism, harassment, microaggressions, etc. are not universal, but instead have to be based on the experiences of the underprivileged people who are subjected to these abuses. If a privileged person doesn't get it on such judgments, he has to defer to the authority of the experience of the underprivileged. 2. This makes it so that, in effect, each underprivileged person has total veto power over any behavior that upsets them. Manners and morals are thus set by the most sensitive person on the planet. If any single member of an underprivileged group says a word, phrase, or action is wrong, then it automatically becomes wrong. If any single African American thinks a word or action is racist, their saying so is performative utterance that makes it racist. Similar, if any woman thinks she's being sexually harassed, then she is sexually harassed. My problem is that I believe that the first statement is true, that the second statement follows from it, but I think the second statement is a recipe for disaster. Probably many, even most SJWs would not accept this statement when it is explicitly stated, but no SJW feels comfortable saying to anyone who makes such an accusation, I'm sorry you feel that way, but the problem is you, not me. You need to get therapy. Of course, we all want to say that, even when we shouldn't, because no one likes to be wrong about something they have been doing for years. But if no one ever gets to say that, we create an endlessly spiraling feedback loop of greater and greater sensitivity. This is, for me, a genuine dilemma, and I would appreciate your suggestions on how to deal with it. So I feel like a lot of people get really worried about, like, oh God, like, what if the, like, most insanely sensitive people completely take over, and, like, what if, like, saying hi to a woman is sexual harassment and blah, blah, blah. But, like, the reality is, like, we're not really in danger of this happening. Like, your question seems to be a little theoretical, because the thing is, like, women are still being, like, raped by their bosses. Sorry, I should have content warning for that. But, like, on the regular, and people don't believe them. So why don't we fix that problem first? And then if the most sensitive babies in the world run the show, then we can deal with that problem. But that problem seems like it's so distant that I'm, like, having trouble really taking it seriously as a thing I'm concerned about. So it's not really a thing that concerns me at this stage. Christina Bryan, oh, I pronounced it right, says, Harry's stream last weekend gave me hope that the world is getting better and that there are more people on our side than against it. However, the whiny man is still at it and was even on TV whining last night. How do we get him to stop? Is it possible to convince people that are self-identified leftists that their position on one issue is far right? Or are such people too far gone? Well, in the case of Graham Linehan, there's not a chance that we're going to convince him of anything. So what we need to be doing instead is convincing people to stop putting him on television. That, I think, really is where the, you know, like, he can rant on Twitter until he's dead, as far as I'm concerned, and he probably will. So we need to convince centrists and liberals to stop paying attention to this, to pay it no mind. Because it's just a waste of time trying to argue with a guy like that. Lexi Zaninetti says, Hi Nat, have you seen any videos by Non-Compete? I don't really know what to think of him, but what's your opinion? Thumbs up or down? I have not, Lexi, unfortunately, seen any videos, but if that's someone I should be aware of, I suppose I should check them out. Daniel Zambrano says, Hi, first off, thank you for your videos. You're welcome. They've been a continuing source of happiness and inspiration for me. I'd really like to ask you, though, what do you think you would say to someone who's been pondering a lot of questions about their own gender and whether or not they might be trans? Well, I cannot tell you whether you're trans or not. No one else really can tell you that. But I would say, ask yourself how long you've been struggling with this. I think basically, some thought experiments there's some thought experiments that can be sort of helpful for people who are sort of in your situation that I've heard proposed. Like, suppose like you went to a doctor and said, "Am I trans?" And the doctor said, "Nope." After doing a psychiatric exam, would you be disappointed by that result? Like, "Oh no, I'm not trans." If you're disappointed in this hypothetical situation, that means you probably want to be trans. If you want to be trans, then you're probably trans. Well, I shouldn't say that, but like, I would say like, what to you does like being trans mean? Do you have a desire to put in everything that it would take to do that? I think, the truth is that when it comes to the decision to transition and to change your, to begin shifting how you think of yourself in this way, there are some practical considerations that get made, I think. Like, what am I saying? I don't know. This is terrible. I'm not giving good advice here. Can someone else take this over the comments? Like, what do you say is like, I think that, yeah, I think I was probably doing my best answering this question with the hypothetical questions. If you could snap your fingers and be a different gender, would you? If yes, you might want to be a different gender. If you want to be a different gender, you might be trans. So that is a place to start anyway. It's not the final word, but it's a beginning. Taj Mahal says, "I cannot remember the last time I saw the word fetishize used in a positive context. It feels like words associated with sexuality and are quickly abandoned in elsewhere. For example, fetish was originally used to describe a certain religious practices. Is fetishizing ever good? What makes it bad? How do we deal with problematic fetishes considering the imprinting process seems pretty random and they end up more or less hardwired for a person's life?" Yeah, there is kind of, I guess, a sort of kink shamey vibe to the stigma that the word fetish has, I suppose. I mean, it like when we talk about, say, like, oh, this man fetishizes Asian women, for example. I mean, the reason that's a problem is not because a man has a fetish. It's a problem because, having a sort of oftentimes that type of fetish results in a kind of objectifying pattern of sexual behavior that's like damaging to the people that it's directed towards. So, I think like fetishizing other human beings or other types of humans, well, I don't think it's bad in itself. Like, I don't think it's immoral to have that kind of fetish. But if you act on it in a way where you're sort of objectifying them, or where you're just not really treating them as fully human or respecting them, like, that's the problem. The fetish itself, like, it's kind of morally neither here nor there. As far as like fetishizing, objects or like materials or like certain sex acts, I really don't see any problem with that at all. So I think, I don't know, like a foot fetish or whatever, like a lot of people are sort of grossed out by it. That I think is just a silly prejudice. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a foot fetish, as long as you don't like be super like, don't like ask random women to see their feet. You know what I mean? Because that's like just crossing a line, but that you shouldn't really be crossing with any like sexual proposition probably, but within the context of someone who you are like having like consensual sexual relationships with, like there's absolutely nothing wrong with having that kind of fetish. La Teta Antifascista says, of each according to their capacity, to each according to their need. If we all agree that ending capitalism is a valid goal, then why patrons have different rights according to their economic contribution? Oh boy. Going here, are we? Should not all contents be available for everybody all the time? I pose this question somewhat in a rhetorical way. What I really want to address are bigger questions like, is it even possible nowadays to stand outside capitalist ways? Have the hypothetical critical outside point of view disappeared? Keep up the great job, Natalie. Kisses. The hypothetical critical outside point of view is, as you say, hypothetical. That is, we're not actually there, right? All of us in capitalist societies who are criticizing capitalism are doing it from within. So all of us are kind of living capitalism because that's the society that we're in. So I don't think like being involved in a kind of capitalist system, like using money and so on, that's not really some kind of hypocrisy, I don't think, on the part of people who are critical of capitalism. I think, we're just being self-critical, sort of as a society self-critical, right? But there's no, the only way to exempt yourself, people try to exempt themselves from capitalism by like going out into the, wilderness and like living on a commune. Well, that to me seems a little bit like, it seems like you're just, okay, you can say like, oh, I've removed myself of all guilt. Well, you have, but you also haven't actually done anything to stop capitalism. You know what I mean? Like if we want to change society, it's not a matter of individuals exempting themselves. It's a matter of changing society. Okay, so let's see. I have to run to the bathroom. I have to powder my face. I'll be right back. Natalie. Why are people in the comments? I don't know. Okay, let's see here. Where were we? Capitalism ruined my life, so I made this meme page, says Natalie, baby, darling, ContraPeasy lemon squeezy. Loved your piece in The Economist. It's refreshing to see a comrade in a publication usually full of articles like the link between polygamy and war, why polygamy breeds civil war, and big love and big war, exploring the link between polygamy and violence. These articles are filled with manosphere dogma, such as women being a resource for men's exploitation, violence being a natural consequence of men not getting laid, blatant racism, and other such incellery. So given that the writers over at the Daily Cuck are a bunch of incels, do you think the success of your incel video piqued their interest in you? And if so, do you think they got off those forums? Okay, so you're asking if the incels who run The Economist interviewed me because of my video. Probably. Did they get off the forums? Probably not. Riley Dosh says, I was going to ask this regardless of the SCOTUS news yesterday, but what is your view of the trans military ban, and is there a chance you might do a video on that? I think it's terrible. I think it's a legal precedent to discriminate against trans people legally. I think it establishes a kind of like government endorsed norm that is, trans people don't have the same rights. Trans people don't belong in society. I think that it is a distraction to say that, oh, but the military is bad anyway, so who cares? Like, that's not what this is about. I'm not saying the military is good. I'm saying that saying everyone but trans people can be in it is more about trans people than it is about the military. I probably won't do a video just on that because I tend to do videos about more general topics. But I have been tweeting and retweeting some stuff about it, so if you want my take further, you can check that out. Ute369 or EWT. Hello, I'm Ute's girlfriend. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I'm sorry if you're pronouncing your partner's name wrong, rather. I'm currently in school for speech pathology, and I'm hoping to break into the field of transgender voice therapy. I think you have a very pleasant feminine voice. Oh, thank you. And wondering if you have received services. I realize that's a pretty personal question, so feel free to not answer. Tangentially, could you offer an opinion on the Twitter videos with the format, "This is my voice, length of time on anime," which criticized for parodying voice transition videos? Thank you, have a nice day. Greater than 90-degree bow. Okay. Yes, so I had a couple people help me with my voice over the last year and a half. One of whom was another trans woman who had just worked on it a lot herself, and she really helped me focus on getting my pitch up. And then I've also worked with a local trans voice teacher in Baltimore who's just a friend of mine. So I actually never had to pay anyone for voice lessons because I just know people who do it. And he has helped me with like a lot of these like drills, a lot of this kind of like resonance training. And he does the kind of work associated with, on YouTube anyway, with his student, Zoe Alexandria on YouTube, who's pretty well known for voice training. Ultimately, I have kind of diverged from the main school of thought about trans voice. I don't really spend a lot of time now thinking about. I actually made a conscious decision to lower my pitch after I think it kind of peaked around June of this year, of 2018. And I didn't like the way it sounded in videos. So I thought it sounded kind of strained. And so I actually now speak at a lower pitch than I used to. But what I do now for voice training is I simply watch videos of American trans women whose voices I like, and I try to imitate little aspects of their voices. And I also will ultimately, like, to me, the most helpful thing is just spending an obscene amount of time listening to recordings of your voice, hearing what you like, hearing what you don't like, making little improvements. Do it a little bit every day. I know a lot of trans people don't want to do that because it makes them dysphoric. But bitch, that's the point. It's not like you're working on it because it makes you dysphoric. So suffer through it and you'll get less and less dysphoric. I guess that's not really what you asked. You didn't ask for my advice, did you? What did you ask? I'm glad you like my voice. I have mixed feelings about it. It's been I like it more lately. But I'm still not completely happy with it. I'm still working on it. Okay, you also asked me what I think about, like, this is my voice on anime. Yeah, I can see. I think they're mostly parodying like trans men who do those, like, this is my voice 3 months on T or whatever videos. I can see it as, like, kind of shitty for cis people to be, like, parodying, like, you know, trans people's, like, transition discourse. Although I admit that the anime one I did find funny. So, but again, I'm not really the target of that. Like, that's really a thing for a trans guy to tell you. I definitely can see how it could be shitty. Okay, Eve Howe says, let's see, how many questions do we have left? I've been going a long time here. Okay, we're doing a good job. Eve Howe says, what do you think of the argument that sex is a social construct? I've heard this argument more and more lately from a pro-trans perspective, even though I consider the biological difference between men and women to be the primary driver of my physical dysphoria and transition. I've even heard people argue that all biological differences between men and women are socially constructed, and that we shouldn't even have split sports leagues because testosterone doesn't provide any significant physical advantage. That being said, I do agree that it is slightly arbitrary that we classify people as male or female based on their genitals at birth, when intersex people clearly exist and that sex traits in general exist on a spectrum. Yeah, so it sounds, Eve, like I think I basically am on the same page as you. Because there's a sense in which it's true, right, that sex is a social construct. And that sense has to do with the imposition of this artificial binary that reduces a really, really complex universe of phenomena to just on or off, basically, male or female. And that obviously is a socially constructed thing. Like in the sports question, like it's way more complicated than just like, should trans people do sports, right? Because you also have like cases like Caster Semenya and like women who just are like cis women, right? Who have like, for various medical reasons, like higher testosterone levels. You know, actually there's no like clear way to divide people biologically in that sense, right? And like, I think that, so in a sense it's a construct, but this idea can be taken too far. Obviously, there is some ontological, biological difference, right, between people, and that sort of generally trends in the male and female cluster, right? Like, of course, where does our idea of sex and gender even come from? And I'm with you also on being sort of, you know, the physical differences between men and women are sort of part of what informs my whole experience of transness, right? And what makes it coherent. So yeah, I'm with you on that, girl. Dane Bow says, just wanted to say again that your recent work has been fantastic. Thanks, Dane. Being a creator that does so many different aspects of your own videos, I have to imagine it leaves you with very little free time. What kind of the things do you do to unwind / have fun when you can? Yeah, I don't have a lot of free time. It's true. What I do to have fun unwind? Mostly, I go visit friends in other cities. When I take some time off, I visit friends or lovers in a different city, and I make myself sound like an internet national slut, which I fully am. And I, geez, what am I saying? I watch a lot of kind of basic YouTube content, like a lot of like YouTube like beauty community stuff, a lot of like trans vloggers. I watch just like a lot of YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube. Is that even really I just never stop, do I? YouTube for work and YouTube for fun. Okay, Jeffrey Skarsk. I watch a lot of movies too when I'm with friends. Not usually by myself though. I like horror movies and weird, creepy movies. Jeffrey Skarsky says, what are your thoughts / concerns about young children getting involved in social justice advocacy? My kids, the older two, 7 and 9 anyway, are practically begging me to produce such a channel. It wouldn't surprise you if you knew them. My inclination is to go for it since I think I can probably do most of what they want, and they're pretty well-spoken and telegenic. But it's a little scary. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a parent myself, and so I sort of am hesitant to give other people like parenting advice, but I do think that there are valid concerns not with having children do social justice advocacy. I think that's totally fine, especially if they want to do it. That's amazing. I do worry about putting children on the internet. That is something I would think long and hard about, because the internet is scary, and stuff that goes on the internet stays on the internet forever. So I don't know. Maybe what I would do is have them start by making this stuff maybe like on a Facebook page that only gets shared with friends and family, because YouTube is kind of the jungle, like anyone can watch it. So I don't know if they get to be the point where they're sort of like young teens and they're really passionate about this, I would say, yeah, let them go for it with a YouTube channel. But at the ages of 7 and 9, I would say keep it private, or keep it like semi-private anyway. Yeah. But I think that also that's, a lot of older people, we just have these intuitions like, no, 7, not what, that's like too early to be on the internet. But like the reality is that like the internet is just like, it's just going to keep getting younger and younger. But yeah, YouTube is a little much. I would not have a 7-year-old on a YouTube channel. I would probably suggest avoiding that. Cloud Sifter says, Natalie, you and your sets get more beautiful with every successive video. Thanks, Cloud. Whatever your name is, real name is. Maybe your real name is Cloud Sifter. Sifter of clouds. Your latest video was great, and I'm glad you made it to deal with that issue seriously compared to the clowns who make jokes about it. However, it didn't really speak to me since I was already 90 to 100% in agreement with your position anyway, and that's okay. Keep making videos you think need to be made. That said, do you think you make an episode soon? You might make an episode soon dealing with the right-wing spin machine. I asked because of the wonderful incident this past weekend involving the Native American and those high school boys from my state. When the uproar from the left happened over the initial video, my sympathies were with the left, but I wanted more facts before I took a firm stand. Then the other videos came out which muddied the waters but didn't exonerate the teens. Then we have the less known facts that the main teen in question, Sandeman, was immediately represented by a major PR firm with ties to the right / Trump, within 24 hours of the initial video's release Sunday. In short, I'm not sure how bad the teens were. Definitely not innocent. MAGA hats were uncalled for. But this major spin is now tarnishing the left. It would be great if someone with your talent could rip everyone involved, on all sides, in equal measure to their transgressions. P.S. Be glad you don't live here. Our governor is as stupid as Trump. Our state attorney general has to spend a lot of time suing the governor to stop/overturn his grabs for power, and we've had him a year longer than Trump. Sorry I couldn't make this shorter. On the flip side, I didn't get to ask my question in December, so would I make an episode about the right-wing spin machine? Well, I think a lot of my videos kind of do deal with that kind of thing. I mean, I think that, you know, when it comes to the way a topic is misrepresented, like that's something I'm going to address with almost any individual topic that comes up. So that's kind of like a pretty general project, I guess. So I guess, yes, in a way. I mean, I think that I tend not to cover like little individual like news of the week type stories like that, because my videos take so long to make that like by the time I was done with it, like it would be old news. But I think if, you know, I'll talk about like particular instances of these kinds of things that can be in a video. Yes. Lugnut92 says, "Hi Natalie, I don't have a good question this month, but I feel like I need to justify my $15 pledge. So, do you use the rooms in your apartment that you film in during daily life, or is like the wallpaper room just for videos? Have a great night." So the wallpaper room, that's just for videos. Like I literally do nothing else in there aside occasionally play piano and film videos. And I'm lucky that I can now afford to live in an apartment where I have a room that's a YouTube room. Thanks, patrons. Okay, Kirkiresa says, Kirkiresa, we've never established how I should pronounce that, have we? The only question that matters, who makes your splendid wigs? If it is you, that makes them. Any notable anecdotes about making said wigs? A favorite, least favorite among them? My favorite is Lenora's. It's so imposing and macabre. It's very fitting and is completely my aesthetic. But to be honest, all of them look great, and so do you. Keep up the great work. Thank you. So no, I don't make the wigs. Most of my wigs, I would say, are from Wigs and Grace, which makes, you know, wigs focus on drag queens, and including the gray Lenora one. The headdress, that's purchased separately. I forget the name of the artist who made that. Lady Foppington's wig was made by a German artist called Maskensauber. That's a gorgeous piece of work too. I'm working on getting better at styling wigs myself, but as it is, I'm not that good at it. Josh Simons says, Natalie, you're amazing. Keep up the fantastic work. We all love you for it. My question is something that I don't have a good answer to, and I imagine you don't either, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm sure you're aware of the many people on the far left who disliked R. Traps Gay, and there are rather unfair reasons why. What do you think is going on here? Why are the people who are probably most helped by informed outreach and meeting people where they are at seemingly most against it? I'm aware it's probably a small minority, but at least on Twitter it's certainly a vocal one. Again, you're the best. Thank you for being you. So the reason for that kind of backlash is it's complicated. It includes a lot of different factors. I mean, you have to understand that like trans people are very like we don't have a lot of representation. And we're in a very dire political situation right now. So amid that, I am one of the chosen few who does have a platform and who people do listen to. So if I do anything and not exactly the way they want me to do it, it's like I'm misrepresenting them, is how I think some people see it. Now, I also think that there's a kind of like distrust. A lot of trans people resent and distrust each other. There's a lot of distrust within this community because we're sort of, we are under such stress from the outside that we kind of end up turning on each other too. I think that it's not really a good look for me to say this, but I think that there's a portion of the hate that is basically thinly veiled envy. And I think that some of it is just like Twitter rumor mill. Like, I mean, almost any YouTuber, no matter what they make videos about, is surrounded by drama at a certain level. Like, look at the beauty YouTubers. Like, they make videos about makeup and they're constantly being like called out and shouted at and angry people in their Instagram comments. Like, it's just the internet, So there's all those kinds of factors at play, and a lot more too. It's really complicated. Okay. What are you doing? Okay. Dimphnomaniac says, "Hi Natalie, I found a quote from Samuel R. Delaney. Science fiction isn't just thinking about the world out there, it's also thinking about how that world might be a particularly important exercise. How the world might be. Sorry, I read that wrong. A particularly important exercise for those who are oppressed, because if they're going to change the world we live in, they and all of us have to be able to think about a world that works differently." Agree, disagree, any other comments? Yeah, I agree with that. I think that exercises in imagination about what is possible are actually kind of a necessary thing, because I think by default, humans are pretty unimaginative. So when we're used to doing something a certain way, we assume that's the only way it could be done. So someone like a science fiction author, even if it's like kind of utopian or dystopian or whatever, can kind of expand our intuitions or our imagination about what's possible. That, I think, is an important moment. Okay. Sarah Jane Webster says, "What's a favorite junk/trash food of yours?" I love McDonald's. I'm so sorry. I know it's bad, and I don't do it that much, but I love McDonald's. I'll never stop loving it. I mean, I'm vegan. What am I talking about? Guys, I'm vegan, okay? I'm vegan. I don't eat McDonald's. Except when I do. I should stop. Nuggies. I know, I love nuggies. Okay, Labor Wave Dashing says, "Where does the name ContraPoints come from? If the question's already been asked, then just make a funny face or something. I don't know." It comes from the fact that I have always wanted to talk about sort of arguments. Contra meaning like against, where you argue, right? Also, ContraPoints is evocative of counterpoint, a kind of like musical composition where you have melodies counterposed with each other. So I was thinking about, it was basically a music nerd pun. It was what I was thinking when I came up with it. It's not at all what I would have called my channel if I came up with a name now. But it's what you have. H Bomber Guy chose that when he was, a kid, so could be worse. ContraPoints, I think, is a fine name for the channel. It's not really my vibe now, but it works. It basically describes what goes on in the channel, I think. Okay, Quince Prince says, "What was your experience in academic music? You've previously said you started out as a music major, and I'm very curious how far you went into that realm. You don't have to talk about this if it brings up memories about your past self, but I'm currently very deep into that world as a music composition major undergrad. By the way, I've always wanted to write an 18th century style counterpoint piece inspired off of you, and I'll probably get around to that soon. Many hugs and kisses from your humble and gracious prince of all that is silver and sonorous, Quince. Thank you, Quince. Yes, I would love to hear your 18th century counterpoint inspired by me. I said earlier in the stream, I guess I was a piano performance major at Berkeley for 2 years. So I was really more focused on jazz, but towards the end of my time, I got sort of more interested in classical music. So I guess I also, when I was in grad school, I took some lessons at Northwestern's Beanan School of Music with one of the grad students there who like gave me some piano lessons. I was playing Brahms, I was playing Schubert, I was playing Beethoven. I should get back to playing piano. I do love it. Brandy Bateman says, I'm just so goddamn glad you exist. Oh, thanks, Brandy. Your content is amazing, all of it. Even your older videos mean the world to me. There's no shortage of trans creators on YouTube, but most are so young they weren't done growing yet when they started transition. Yeah. Seeing your transition play out across your channel's lifespan has given me a sense of hope that I can't quite find the words to convey. So yeah, I'm just super glad you exist and that you rock. Thanks, Brandy. Yeah, I'm very aware of my existence on YouTube, especially that now that I've gotten popular. There's not a lot of popular trans media figures apart from like that one who transitioned like later than, you know, their teens or early 20s. So I started at 28. I mean, it's not unheard of, you know. Christine Jorgensen was 26, 27 when she's transitioned. Basically my age when Natalie Mars, the porn performer, she transitioned when she was 30. She was a fan of my last video, so I've been chatting with her a little bit. Yeah, I feel, to be honest, I feel this like terrible sense of insecurity about those other trans girls on YouTube who are like, they're so young and fucking pretty. How dare they? Yeah, it's good to have representation of people transitioning later, because it's just a very different thing to transition, you know, after you've fully been through puberty and all that, as opposed to, you know, this like late teen transition thing, which is it's a different experience. Or even earlier than that. I mean, we have like Kim Petras now. Yeah, we all think we should have started earlier. We all think that. Thank you, Brandy. Okay, so Charlotte says, would you consider doing a commentary on Swerve and Turf, Carol Pateman's swerfy essay, What's Wrong with Prostitution? Probably not like a whole video on that, but it's conceivable that I probably in the long term, I might eventually do a video about sex work. And I do have in 2019 at least one video on the horizon that sort of deals with TERFs. And it's going to deal with TERFs in a different way than I've ever dealt with them on my channel. And in other words, instead of just attacking Abigail Cockbane, I would like to give this topic the like full on me talking to the camera, trying to be persuasive, you know, treatment. Okay. Vith says, thank you for all your hard work, and I hope you're taking good care of yourself. Thank you. Lately, what in your life has been nourishing your creativity or feeding the sparks that later become videos? I have this friend who's like, she's like this like endless encyclopedia of like strange arty movies, and I always will like just like watch like 4 of them in a day with her, and that gives me, I always get all kinds of inspiration from that. Like visual inspiration. I've been inspired a lot lately by like drag performers, obviously. So that's kind of my source, a lot of my artistic source material. Liv Douglas says, hi Natalie, much love girl. How did you choose the name Natalie? Any inspiring figures with the name or from parents? Well, I wanted a name that started with the letter N. My parents weren't really interested in naming me at the time. They were kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? But I guess I I don't know. I just kind of liked the name Natalie. I guess maybe like Natalie Portman and I just did think of Natalie Tran, who is the YouTuber who created the channel Community Channel. This is like old YouTube, but she's still a wonderful YouTuber. I love her. And maybe like Natalie Tran, maybe think trans Natalie. And that might have influenced me slightly. But it's hard to say. I liked the flow of it. Natalie. I like 3 syllables. That's nice. Rachel Chen says, late submission, what's your method of estrogen delivery? Pills. Spironolactone, estradiol. I've considered switching to some other thing, to like injections or something, but honestly, I don't mind taking the pills. I kind of like taking the pills. So I don't have really that sense of motivation to switch to like injections. That's the last of the questions originally. Let's make sure I get the last of the new questions. We're going for almost 3 hours here. Let's see. No, stop this. Why are you doing this to me? Okay, Oh, Rachel, I see you edited your comment to ask also, do I have an idealized end goal for transitioning? The goal is to live as fluently as possible in the world as a feminine woman. Whatever that means to me, I guess I have some vision of it. I guess I have some other trans women I kind of like look up to, at least in terms of like goals. It's like, oh, I kind of want to be like that. But obviously, I'm just always going to be me, and that has to be invented rather than like planned. In some sense, like you have to figure out who you are or who you can be. You can't just like sort of decide in advance, I want to be this. Like you have to, you find out what works and what doesn't. So my end goal is whatever works. I'm getting closer. And I have some difficult times ahead in the next 2 years, but I'm getting quite optimistic about it. Antonia Sciano Di Cola says, or Sciano Di Cola, Italian. Not a question, just a comment. Kill Tabby sooner rather than later. Okay, I don't think my fan base is going to appreciate this suggestion, but noted. Armand says, forgot to put this in my main question, but I'm watching The Ring Cycle, the Boulez version, lately, and I really like it, but I can clearly see Wagner's bad ideas in it. Do you think great art can be appreciated despite what it is expressing? We could write a book about that. I think the general answer is yes, but I think that the reality is that oftentimes there can be obstacles to that. Like, I mean, when we say great art, what do we mean? Like, I mean, I think there's art that has these like bad components of it, or is by a problematic person, or is by, well, problematic is too soft because everyone is a problematic person, but like, there's art by like straight up like terrible people that is still good. Do I appreciate art like that? Yes, I do. I think it's worth keeping in mind that someone involved with it is terrible, and keeping an eye out for signs of that in the work, which can ruin it. Absolutely can. But do I think in general that it's possible to appreciate art made by terrible people? Yeah, I do think that. I do think that, yeah. Favorite video games. Sorry, Domino Stars asks favorite video games, if any. I really don't play video games like ever anymore. I just don't have time, you know? Like, there's only so many things you can do in life, and I've decided that video games are not one of them. I do, most recently, games I've enjoyed are Pokemon and The Sims, so I guess I like those. Um, I'm not even a fake gamer girl, because to be fake, you have to be trying. Scarlet Crow says, thanks for your response to my earlier comment. If you really like the rain, Portland and Seattle would love to have you here. It's typically a constant mild drizzle. That and there's a ton of fangirls, including myself and my polycule that adore you. My friend Ronnie, tangential pun. Oh, Rainy, Ronnie, Rainy. Okay, gave you a flyer and nervously went on her way when you were there at XO Fest. By the way, I'd love to marathon through the Nightmare on Elm Street series, my strange obsessive fandom with you. I love horror movies. Yeah, I really like Pacific Northwest weather. Like, I like all that rainy, drizzly messiness. I do. All right, that is it for these questions. So we're going to call that an AMA. I am going to go get some rest and try to stop being sick. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. And thank you for your questions. I'll talk to you next month. All right, bye.